Hello, everybody. This is Nancy Reyes with For Your Canine.
And Joanne Soike with For Better, For Worse.
Let us know you're there. It's been a very hectic evening for me. I just got back from Ohio, and my plane was delayed, so I just literally walked through the door to come and do this. So it was, and find out we have no Wi-Fi, so I'm using a hotspot. So it's awesome. So this is how you can kind of test your resilience, right? So
This should
let
be
me know you're there, and we're gonna talk today a little bit about male dogs in training, right? So because I hear a lot of hi Judy, hi Lisa, how's it going?
Hi,
Hi
Michelle.
Michelle. So those of you who the reason we kind of came up with it, because sometimes I think we come up with more excuses than real information for our intact male dogs. And we're going to talk a little bit about Eddie. And we're going to talk a little bit about training intact males or neutered, and some of the changes they go through, and some of the things we can do to train them better instead of say, oh, he's just a boy dog or whatever. Since Joanne and I have had both neutered and intact males, so one of the first things we wanted to chat about is kind of their development for those of you who have young males. So we wanted to talk about, marking and a little bit about development before we got into the training piece of it. Hi, Lisa. I hope you're feeling better. So I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about developmentally what we're dealing with when it comes to hormones. So whatever your view on hormones is, this is not. You can research it yourself. This is just what we've researched and what we've observed. So there's a lot. The controversy about spaying and neutering and keeping your dogs intact is a big one. So we're not here to argue it. We're here to kind of discuss it and kind of why we go the way we do. Right? Did you have anything to add, Joanne?
No, I think it's really good to kind of put that out there, though, right? We're not telling you to do things one way or another. If we do say something, it's definitely our opinion or what we've read. And if you would like more information, you can email us later and we can cite some studies for you, one way or the other. But again, this is our opinion tonight.
Right. So, and we both have had, like I said, neutered and intact. So one of the reasons I currently have an intact male, he's a very big dog. One of the things lately, the studies that are showing that early spaying and neutering causes a lot of ACL tears in agility dogs, and also some cancers. And keeping them intact a bit longer helps curb the possibility, right? And cancer is tough because, I mean, a lot of our breeds are riddled with cancer. Golden retrievers, shepherds, but all you can do is try to do what you can to keep it at bay as best you can. And it's not a right or wrong. It's just, we're just trying to do the best for our dogs and keep them as healthy as long as possible. So, and some of you who've rescued dogs, you really didn't have a lot of choices, right? But one of the things with early spaying and neutering is the muscle mass diminishes sooner, and they tend to have more issues with that. And there's a study done on Rottweilers. They have a higher incidence of osteosarcoma if they're spayed and neutered at an early age. So then this is and I have, like I said, I have a very large male shepherd, so I really like to keep him intact a bit longer, so that he hopefully stays healthier. That's my goal, right? And Joanne has two intact males, so we'll have a lot of discussions about having two of those.
Boys will be boys, won't they?
Yes. So one of the things we wanted to talk about, for those of you who have young dogs, or just to kind of progress it really quickly, between 4 to 6 months, already you see some hormonal changes taking place in your puppies. So they can hump more. They might start learning to lift their leg at that point. Some dogs lift their legs sooner. And again, it doesn't mean they can do this leg lifting and all this behavior when they're neutered as well. But you see it in intact males a little more. And so you see some big shifts in their hormones coming through at that point. Some of the females are starting to get ready to go into season, and the males are noticing it more, right? Between 6 to 9 months, they're like junior high kids, right? They're like interested, and they're really, their hormone changes are big. They're interested in girl dogs, but a little differently now, and they're starting to develop, do a little bit more different behaviors. And like in junior high, you can kind of think how they're kind of awkward and kind of weird and just trying to figure stuff out. So I had someone contact me about their young dog. He's almost like 6 to 9 months, starting to exhibit some different behaviors. And a lot of it is testing at that age, right? So it's a matter of what you do with it to help them get better with that. A little bit more growling. You see the males doing a little bit more posturing, things like that. And then from 9 to 12 months they're true teenagers, right? They're true adolescent, high school type, and their play and their gets a little more serious, right? It's not as happy-go-lucky. So like my shepherd, I've really been watching him because during that time period, because I didn't want him to become a jerk of a shepherd. So I wanted him to really stay friendly. So I really monitored his play, who played with him, how he played, and I monitored if I saw any arousal or anything that was shifting, not in such a good way, I interrupted it, right? Because I really wanted him to not develop nasty habits or start to try to do some bad behaviors during that time.
Right. And if we go back and we talk about sort of that 4 to 6, 4 to 7 month time range, right, where she's talking about junior high kids, this is where your dog might not be quite so pushy. They are in that testing phase, like Nancy says, but one of the big issues is if you have other dogs at home, or you frequent your classes, those start to be the ages where other dogs stop looking at them as puppies. You no longer get that puppy pass. You don't get to do the dumb things anymore. And kind of like she said, the awkward junior high kid, right? You're going to go around and slug your friends. That's the point where you might get in a fist fight. You might get in an argument where, when you're a toddler, we just put you in timeout and say, don't do that. So the consequences get much harsher from other dogs. So, males, I think, and I mean females too, but we're talking about boys tonight. So as those hormones kind of start to come in, you could start to see some of those. So that's the moment that I really feel is be careful with your other dogs at home and other places. Those that have had really great friends and played real rough, that might be the time to monitor closely.
Right. Because especially at that young age, it's when they start to get bullied by other dogs. Like one of Melanie Earp's, her 4, was a little bit of a bully with Tango, but we interrupted it. We didn't allow. First of all, we didn't want 4 to continue to develop that. We also didn't want to stress out Tango, a little bit not worried about it, or put him in a position to defend himself. So Melanie and I really worked that situation for both dogs, right? They're both intact males, and 4 is, he doesn't do that anymore. We addressed it early enough, and we 4 was testing, and Tango, that's a little bit younger, and we're only talking Tango's 6 months younger, but it was enough of a difference where 4 was, like, oh, I'm the big man on campus. And then, but it was the behavior was monitored, and so now they're not buddies, but they're also, that behavior is not, we no longer see it now that they're 3 and almost 4 years old, right? So same with Noah and Tango, but Noah and Tango have a little bit different relationship. They can hang out and be okay, but they're not going to be buddies.
Right. And then you take, Noah and his brother four, who used to, they saw each other at least twice a month growing up. And Mel, I can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was right about 9 to 10 months old where they would really sort of, and they'd still play. Once they hit a year old, they cannot play together anymore. They will growl at each other. And I don't know that either one would actually do anything, but that's not a test that I'm wanting to set up and see, right? So we just try and limit that. Don't growl at him, don't look at him, just leave him alone.
Right. Yeah. So we really wanted to keep the relationships that the other males dogs work together so that they can at least be around each other, because if you let dogs work it out, especially males, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. However, on the upside, over the years I have done quite a lot of male to male dog aggression, and I have to say they can have a coexistence. It may not be the one you want, but they can actually work well together. And we've had cases, and I've worked with cases that are really, they can be together and stay together. Female dog to dog aggression, not so much. I haven't had as much success with that. Out of maybe 10 cases, we've had to rehome maybe 3 or 4 of them, which is, with males, we've been able to keep them in the home most of the time. So,
which it's actually so funny, right? Because when you want to talk cross species, I always use that scenario. 2 guys can get in a fist fight, and then they go and have a beer, and they're all right. And one woman says something bad about another woman, and I hate you for life, right?
Right.
I hate you. I hate your friends, and so it's just it's funny how the grudge holding, right? It sort of seems to transfer across the species as well.
Right. So, and what I wanted to also address is the testosterone. As they start getting into, as they start developing, right, and maturing, that testosterone goes up, which is why you see that more testing, more behavior things. But eventually, the testosterone does level off. It does level off. It doesn't keep going up forever. So when you neuter the dogs young, it's yeah, Terry. Female to female aggression is real. Like, no duh. Males are so much easier in that respect, for sure. But that testosterone eventually levels off, and that's why we see, like with our male dogs, there's not that much testing anymore. They're not really, I'm gonna get you. There's none of that. They can be around each other. They can see each other. They can work around each other without really any problems at all, and nobody's eyeballing anybody else anymore. But they're almost they're 3 years old now, so they've matured, and they're more mature dogs, so they're easier to they've learned. But we've also monitored that any behavior. We don't let them work it out, and we're very careful about not letting them have bad experiences with other male dogs, meaning letting them play to where they're gonna get into a fist fight. So this is the big thing about when you have a young male dog, you can allow them to play, but not allow them to play and get aroused to the point where they get into a discussion, right? You need to interrupt it before that it becomes that, right? They can play for a little while, and then you need to, stop it.
And that little while might be different between dogs. I have one where that little while might be 15 or 20 minutes. I have another who might be a minute and a half or 2. That's just who they are, and you have to know that with your dog, right? And you should know that on an arousal level too. And other things can come into play, like, is there a third dog? Is there a toy? Is there food present? All of those things can turn into other things. And even though it's not necessarily a resource guarding issue, it can bring up that arousal, which can create what you don't want.
Right. And then the other thing I wanted to breed specifics. This is what Jean is. But generally, when does testosterone level off? Usually, I would say close to when they're almost like 2.5 is when you start to see that level off, depending on the breed, of course. Like, we have all big dogs, so we have all big dogs. I have Shepherds, we have a Doberman, Vizslas. They're not little dogs, so I would say I saw that level off at about 2.5 years old. when they started to kind of calm down some and stop testing so much, and stop being, what are you looking at? What do you, that stuff, it kind of stopped about that time. So so I would say about that. The little dogs probably sooner. You probably see that level off at about a year for the smaller breeds, right? Because then they're almost done growing and developing at that time, right? So, and that's why we're not against spaying and neutering, but you want to delay that spaying and neutering until they're done developing and growing, 2.5, 3 years old, so that then they can. Because most of the truth is, the reason that spaying and neutering is so prevalent is because of population control. Most of us that are listening to a Facebook Live about adolescent males and training is probably not going to let the dog run around and breed indiscriminately and just make a lot of other puppies. I mean, we're just not going to do that. One of the big reason is population control. But one of the things that, and I think it's very important, because it is important, because we do have too many dogs and too many. So we do have to do that. The thing is, those of us that are, you also have to preserve the breeds that need preserving, right? You're ready for that leveling off to happen. Yeah, tell me about it. And then you might have a very slow maturing dog like my own. So anyway, so that's that. I just wanted to talk a little bit about that. And if you have a neutered male, it's still, a lot of the rules apply, like urine marking. One of the reasons they urine mark is, rival, if there's a female in heat, and what were some other ones, Joanne? A female in heat.
Yeah, so breeding, they can pick up breeding status through urine, of course. They can also do like a threat or a status assessment, right? So if you have the big head honcho, I own this place kind of dog, right? Or even a real timid dog, they can tell kind of in those pheromones there. They can also sort of tell the fitness or health of the dog in their urine. And then the last one, which I found quite interesting, was an emotional status, right? So if a dog has just gone through something traumatic or fearful, or even something very exciting, that will actually come out in the urine as well.
Yeah, so that's sniffing pee, sniffing urine, and all that. So I have a pee licker. And they get a lot of information, like Joanne said, from doing that as well. And I'm just going to say that the truth is, he's finally, has started to level off. That started to level off at about, I think, when he was about 2.5. But he was an intense pee licker. So he still does it and he wants to, but it's much better now. It's a little bit less crazy. So you definitely, thanks, Christy, for that. Thanks, Christy. Yeah, there's a lot of information out there about spaying and neutering. So I suggest that you kind of read up on it and make the decisions based on those things. I'm gonna, because I had to go through a little process myself with my female. I was thinking of doing the ovary sparing spay instead of a regular spay. So as I researched it, I decided to do a regular spay, and maybe we'll do girls, a girl one, but I chose to do that one instead. For her, because after the research and all that, it's so it's so important. But so you need to research it. You can make those choices on your own. Okay, so so that's how the dogs get all that information, right? And all that. That's why they do sniff pee and they mark over it and they make decisions on it, and the health and all that stuff. So that's why they mark, right? And some of the dogs that are not quite status seeking, or that aren't really up in the status, they tend to mark more, not less.
Yeah, and I was there in the research that I was neutered males, unaltered males will mark over other unaltered males way than anybody else. The second one they'll mark over is unaltered, and then third would be neutered males, and then honestly, spayed females barely registered on the scale. They didn't feel the need to mark over spayed females, which I thought was very interesting. So if you have an unaltered male and there's other unaltered male pee there, boy, that's going to be the tough one for the dog.
Unaltered means, yeah, intact, right.
Intact, yes.
So neutered, so that's interesting. Is it okay to let your dogs mark on walks? That seems to be primarily both my neutered and into, yes. So that's a really good question, Chris. I think, I think, I don't usually let Tango just mark indiscriminately. I kind of control that a little bit. Because I do nose work, I want him to be clear that he just can't go and just mark wherever he wants. So at the facility, he does a lot because, you know, there's so much pee there, it's hard to get him. But usually in other places, I'll give him a command to go pee so that he's not used to just peeing any time, any place he wants, because I want him to be clear when he's working. I don't want him to pee. So we'll talk a little bit about that, right? When as it pertains to training. So
yep, I also have the alter to that, which is don't pee there. I do actually have that command for both of my boys, right? Whenever you come up to a post or something like that, you can just tell their body language starts to change. And I do just kind of like hey, don't do that. Don't pee there. They're like, ah, man. So,
so yeah, I do control his peeing because I don't want him to just think it's okay to just pee any place, anytime, especially those of you who do nose work, because our environments are so different. It's really, I want him to really be mindful about peeing, and he doesn't just get to do it anytime. Yeah, Castle's a pee licker. That's just so gross to me, but he's really improved a lot. So I'm very happy that he's gotten so much better about doing that. He still wants to, but he specifically does it with my very old female shepherd. He licks only her pee. So
yeah. And Allison, I will tell you, the pee licking, I spent a lot of the afternoon going over pee research anyway. So the pee licking, they get so much more information. So I don't know that I would use the word it's rewarding for them, but it definitely gives them much more stimulation and information to process. So if you let them lick it, they're going to go to lick it, right? They're going to learn to want to do that.
Right. And so, yeah, I interrupt his licking a lot. I don't let him pee. I don't do it. And Amy, it says mine can pee on a flexi and not on a leash on a walk. And yeah, those are the kind of discriminations you want for your male dog. And I did it for my neutered male. I had a neutered lab, Kaiser, and that's exactly what he peed on a flexi, but not on a leash, because he was a much bigger marker than Tango is, which is so interesting. But I didn't have it as a young puppy either. So.
Yeah, and Carolyn, yes, dogs can. I don't know that I would say mark as they run, but they can definitely pee as they run. Right. So if there's something interesting, they can definitely leave a stream. I have one of those. So
yeah. So with Tango, yeah, I'm very particular about when we go places, allowing him to pee and when he can pee. I do control that a little bit, quite a lot, because I don't want him to. With my other male, I did let him just pee whenever, and granted, nose work wasn't, but he had no issue with going in there and lifting his leg all the time. So, and females lick too. And just so I think somebody mentioned about a female that marks. I did have one. She was an intense marker. Like, wow. So yeah, I know all about female marking, and that's much more difficult. With the males, they have to assume a position. Females just drop and pee, which is awesome. But yeah, I've been there, done that as well. My current females don't. But one of the things with female dogs, they tend to they mark more when they're getting ready, when they're coming in or out of season. So that's a possibility. I found that out with my intact females.
Yes. And I've had two in the past who were, serious, intense markers. They were like males. They'd save a couple drops to be able to go wherever. One of mine, actually a Doberman, would actually lift her leg. She would squat and lift her leg and pee. And the current border collie I have now does the same. So it's like, oh my gosh, what is happening? But if you have a female, I know we're talking boys, but if you have a female that that leg lifts, there's been some in utero saying if they're surrounded by males on both sides, some of that testosterone from development can actually transfer into your female and create more of that marking behavior.
Right. So that's yeah. I had a spaceman that lifted her leg. Oh yeah, I did too. Mine used to. Lucy was a horrible marker. Oh, and she would mark in the house too, which was really annoying. Anyway, so yes, I do. We do control. So the reason we're kind of going over the hormone and the P and the marking is because it's really important to understand why they do it, so that we can train it. If we understand why, it's easier for us to train it. So so that's one of the things. It's understanding why they do it. So it's not like we can say, okay, don't ever do that again. But you can put some controls on it. So it's compromise, right? So everybody can be happy, if you will. Yes, yeah, that's true, Terry. That's why I chose. That's why I chose to spay her completely. That's exactly why I decided to spay my lab because the ovary spay, and then I have an intact male that I'm going to keep intact for a little while longer, and it's just the with ovary sparing, they still go through a season, so the intact males it was just not going to be a good choice for me. Again, not choice for me. So that's why I really want you guys to think about, like, this is why they do it. And so you can work with them instead of against them and fighting it and being, having such issues. Anyway, so that's why they mark. And so we're going to talk a little bit about training for those of you who do nose work or any other sport, on how to keep those things on check. So Joe talked about teaching to pee on a collar but not on a harness. Absolutely. So for those, what I'm going to kind of talk about is what I have done with my intact male dog. When he has his collar on, he can pee and go do his business. When his harness comes on for nose work, he never can pee in that harness. So this is the training part that's kind of a drag for the handler. I put the harness on at the start line and I take it off immediately after he's done searching. I don't want any accidents on that harness. I don't want him peeing on it, peeing when he's wearing it. So I've managed to do that pretty much consistently as I'm training him. So he really understands that if he has a harness on, he can't pee. So yes, you can train that, but you have to be very, very diligent about it. And some people, if it's a harness or a collar or just a different collar, you put this collar on, you can't pee on this collar, but you put a different collar on, you can pee on that one, right? Or leash, or like a flexi. Somebody mentioned earlier, you put on a flexi, you can go pee, but when you're on a leash or whatever, you can't pee, right? So you can make it very clear.
Which the flexi is unfortunate though in NACSW because you can't have them on that to pee at a trial.
But you can have them to search in it, so you can do the opposite.
Right.
So Lisa asked, what would be the reason to neuter your male after 5 years or older? Really, the reason you would want to neuter them after they're at least 5 or so, because they're done growing, is to prevent testicular or prostate cancer.
Yep.
That's why you would do that, right? So yeah, that's why you would, just to prevent that cancer. But I am choosing to keep my dog intact a little longer past 5 and just keep an eye on it, and just keep checking on it and make sure that if it starts to develop, then I'll take care of it and get him spayed or neutered. Joe, is it the same with training? Yes, absolutely, Joe. You have to. That's what I mean. When you are going to be clear for that dog, it's in training too. And it's hard because there are some days you're like, oh my God, I'm tired and I don't want to go through all that. But you have to. It's like in training, that harness means you don't pee. That's it. So I take it off. When he was younger, I would take it off after he searched, so that if he walked back to the to the car or walk back. If he peed, it wasn't a big deal. He wasn't wearing that harness, right? So, it, no peeing on a harness while he can sniff the ground is like a dog sniffing not to find odor when doing nose work.
I think that's going to depend on your dog, Nan, right? If you have a male that's really into dog smell or really into critter smell or something, if you're ready to go searching, I might not let him do that. If your dog can go sniff, 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 and you're like, hey, buddy, you ready? And they're like, oh, okay. And that's it. And they can cut themselves off, then I think it's fine. But it's going to depend on your dog.
Right. How does that change them? Usually if you neuter or spay or if you neuter your dog after like 3 or 4 years old, it doesn't change them at all. They're already grown. They're already who they are. Their personality is there. So it doesn't really. I have not seen a lot big changes in when you spay and neuter at a later age. The personality pretty much stays intact. You do see those changes though if you spay them earlier. They do have some more personality changes because they're not done growing yet, right? So, but when they're 5, I've not seen a big difference. And I spayed my female Cha-Cha at 5, my shepherd at 5 years old, and it didn't change her personality one bit. She's the same dog she was. Yeah.
The only thing that I would say watch for, because I don't think it changes every dog, and I think it's really mostly females, but watch that food intake. Because 6 months after spay, they can get a little poofy. So you're just gonna want to manage. You may have to cut their food back after you spay. And Christy, that's interesting. I did not realize that neutering prevents torsion. If for those of you who don't know what torsion, it's bloat. And those of us with large breeds, that's a fear. But I didn't realize that. So Christy, if you have anything on that study, if you could post that in the comments, that'd be great.
Yeah, because of that. I worry about that a lot. I worry about a lot of that. So.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, Joe. In training, you definitely want to. If you're doing nose work, you want to. It doesn't have to be a harness collar, but I'm choosing that. His harness, he doesn't pee in it. You can do it for anything else. Same with you can change the collars too. Some people use that. Torsion. Okay. Got it. Okay. Yeah, makes sense. Anyway, so that's one of those things that you can do for as you're training your dog, and be very I want to wait I want to make sure that you want to be very clear about what you're asking them, right? If you have this on, you don't do that. If you have this on, it's okay. I don't want to wait too long. Brutus intact, had a wellness check at 8 years old and was fine 5 months later. Yeah, exactly. And that's what I mean. You'd have to be like really on top of it. So I'm gonna keep him intact a bit longer because he's such a big dog. He's such a large dog, but I'm going to we're gonna monitor it as much as we can, and so that way can kind of stay on top of it. And I'm kind of a little bit of a worrywart when it comes to our dog's health, so it's usually so it'll be fine. All right. So that's for training, for nose work training. That's what I would suggest with your male dogs. And so when you're and if you guys are interested in other sports, please post that. But in nose work, when you're doing a detection, when we start training, when we introduce it, or if you're having a current problem in nose work with your dog peeing, go all the way back. Go back to boxes, and you can be in the front of our facility. There's a lot of pee, a lot of dogs. You put a box with odor. The dog should be able to get to it right away, so that they don't get a chance to sniff, to get interested in the other pee. The odor becomes more important. So we do that when we start our dogs, like right from the beginning. Marking and barn hunt. Yeah, same thing. So same concept, Elizabeth. You can put a rat like right when they come in the ring, so they just go in there and find the rat and then stop, or go in, find the odor and then and stop, and get them just very interested in finding the rat right away when they go in, and then eventually slowly move the rat deeper, or make the problem in the front of the barn hunt, ring a little more challenging, like elevated or whatever. So they're thinking about finding the rat before they get interested in peeing, right? Because that's the big thing, is you want that success of finding that odor and it trumping the desire to go in there and pee and mark, right? Now we're in a fence. It's like a pee might be coming out. If I give a verbal no pee, does that make the judge pee? It doesn't make the judge pee, let her know.
So I think, Christy, I love you. So first, let me just say this. My Vizsla has never, ever in his life peed in a search until a few weeks ago when I was searching at Nancy's place in a detective trial. And when you know it, I was just about to go inside. He went over to this post and he was sniffing and just whoop, lifted his leg. And I was like, oh my God, no, right? And so I was just floored, right? And so it's hard if you have that dog who has never peed and then peed. You got to get over that, because that to me is something that it shouldn't have happened. I don't know why it happened. I'm gonna be diligent about it now, but don't freak out about it, right? So, Christy, has he ever peed on a fence? If he's never peed on a fence in a search, and I know he's still young, but you've had a lot of searches under his belt. If he's never peed, I wouldn't super worry about it. If you see him really start to assume that position, then yeah, no pee, right? But if he just looks like he's searching normally, don't be afraid by it.
Yeah.
We want to prevent it, not freak out about it.
Right. And Terry, you're right. In agility, especially since the studies are showing that delaying the spaying and neuter keeps the dog bone and all that, and it keeps their muscle mass intact. So yeah, a lot of people, I see it more and more being delayed in all the sports, right? So when you want to teach it, you want to make sure you understand. And also, for those of you, Elizabeth, and that do barn hunt or scent work, you can bring the pee inside, right? So have a box of pee. You can get pee easily, and put it in a box, and the dog has to choose between odor or pee, or between pee and a rat, right? So they start to make those decisions pretty regularly. So you're gonna, it's like a spot training, right? You can bring some pee in the ring with a rat, and you better, if they choose a rat, you're gonna reinforce the rat, or you're gonna reinforce the odor, right? The big thing is you don't want to ask them for too much too fast. They want to mark, is if the problem is a little too hard, they start to do something else and then they'll pee, because then they got distracted and they're into something else, versus they get in there and they work it. Eventually you're going to make it more challenging, but that is how I started my own dog. You put hide, grass, pee, boom, paid, good dog. And then we did a lot of that early on. And for Joe Butler with her young puppy, lots of that. Pay, and be done. And you just do it once. It's the reintroducing, like odor is more important than pee. And I did bring in pee and female smells too, like female girly smells, and put it in the box. So he had to choose between odor and girly smells, or pee, because he was such a pee licker, right, when he was younger.
Yeah, and remember, guys, it's usually the unfamiliar dog's pee, right? The dogs that you're in class with all the time, that they walk by, sure, they'll sniff it, maybe they'll pee on it, but it's the dog they've never seen before, they've never smelled before, which is why sometimes at trials we see more interest in that type of thing. So if you have friends or neighbors or whatever, with that, and I just to clarify, Nancy said put pee in a box. I will put pee on a paper towel in a box. I won't have them pee in a box. Just so you guys know. And yes,
so we collect it. We collect it.
And so
Yeah.
what you really want too is I would suggest, if you're going to run that exercise, get out your video camera. Okay? Because it looks different when they hit urine than it does when they hit odor. And that way you can play that back. You can play it in slow motion. You can really start to watch and see what are the telltale signs that he's on something interesting.
Yeah. Usually, the body language is a very stiffness when there's pee, when they're on pee.
Yep.
Not aggression stiffness, but just like, ooh, what's that stiffness, right? Is usually what you'll see. And for those dogs, and I use this exercise with a dog. He's gone now, and it was a student's dog that he used to pee like the minute he walked out the door, it was so bad. And so we used the box, close to the pee, hide, and he had to make those choices so often that it was pretty automatic, and he was able to compete without a lot of peeing. He was pretty successful. Could you sell pee in a box or smells in a box? Yeah. Not letting him get into the habit of peeing. And I know I think Christine Rodeo is a rescue, so he might have had a chance to. And a lot of the dogs that tend to have a little more anxiety tend to mark more. So you definitely, they got to practice a lot. If you have a young dog, you can nip it in the bud earlier so that they don't get into that habit. But if you already have a dog that's in that habit, and you can pair it, Christine, you can have hide with steak and pee. Let them, and if you could do it once a day, you don't do it a lot, because sometimes the dogs will lose interest. You want to do it very little, and the payoff has got to be very big for them to start making that decision a little bit easier. And then you're going to make the hide a little, further in, where they have to go past some pee to get to the hide and stuff like that. So once they start doing that really well, then you can start making things a little more complex, and so that they know not to, that they can't pee, right?
Yeah. And Carolyn, I think if it's in a box, right? No, they look pretty much the same. They get that stiffness. They'll want to maybe lick the box, but they'll definitely be very still and stiff and checking it out. If they smell it in the air, different. If they actually smell source of a bitchin' season, yeah, you'll get a different response. But in a box, no. So I know too, I would collect what people have in panties, right? I would keep them in Ziplocs, and I'd toss them out in boxes every now and again. So.
Right. Yeah. And when Joanne, you're a little frozen.
I'm a little what?
So when you're frozen a little bit. I hear you, but now I see you move a little bit. Okay. So those are some of the things you can do to help. And the other thing is, even though if your dog, some male dogs especially can be very doggy. They enjoy dogs. They like dogs. They enjoy being around dogs. So you want to do the same thing. I usually put a collar of one of my dogs that's home. I put them in a box, and they have to choose odor versus the doggy smell. Some dogs really like dogs, and it doesn't matter that it could be dogs that are very friendly with other dogs, or dogs that are a little reactive. It looks the same. They're very interested in the other dog smell in the area, right?
Yep. And I have one of those Vizslas. So it doesn't matter. Like, I remember the first couple times we went to Nancy's place. If any of you have been there in that birch room, boy, he would just stop on the floor, and he'd come up, and he'd look like a beluga whale. I mean, his skull would just be shifting from clacking so much. And I noticed I started to struggle with that at a lot of places, right? Anywhere that was just the dogs had been before us, he felt the need to check it out. So I knew I had a problem that I wanted to fix. So Nancy actually gave me a great idea. I don't know that you've done it, but I used it very successfully. You know, the like 97-cent carpet squares that you can get at a Menards or a Lowe's. I went and got a couple of those. And I passed them out to my students, and I said, hey, can you put these in your kennel? in your car. Let the dogs lay on them, roll on them. If anybody pees on them, don't worry about it, right? Just get them real nice and dog smelly. And what I did was I had an empty box on one of those carpet squares, and then the next box was odor, right? And if he really could not come off of the box on the carpet square, I just gently took him and put him away. And then I'd bring him out again. We'd try again. And when he got to odor, right, we would just have a super party. But again, it wasn't hard. You should be able to catch odor while you're smelling that carpet square. So that's how, and really, it pretty much solved my problem. He still will stop, but it's more like 2 seconds now. And then he's like, oh, okay.
Right. Because it's basically allowing them to do a lot of that sniffing and all that in regular life. It's hard when you don't want them to do it in trials. So you want to really be diligent about like, okay, this is okay. And you want to let the dog be a dog. So you don't want to be that big of a bummer, but you want to be very clear when they can and can't do it, so that then they're clear. Like, I can do it here, I can't do it here. And so then when they're working, whatever that is, whether in whatever sport that is, you definitely want them to then understand, oh, we're working and we're not doing that then. But if you allow the dog to pee everywhere all the time, or to get interested in all these other smells all the time, then it becomes a little bit of a problem then, because it's like, well, you let me do it then, now I can't do it. It just becomes a very discussion, a conflict you don't want, right? It's like, you can do it here, but you can't do it here, because you can't take away the dog's desire to check out other dog smells and all that. They're going to be dogs, but you want to be very clear about when they do that, and you got to give them time to be dogs and just do doggy stuff, right?
Yeah, Christine, the tennis ball got a tennis ball from a friend who ignored dog saliva smells. Gosh, that could be just a whole nother Facebook Live, right, Nance? I've done a lot of experimenting with the interesting dog saliva, and I think your tennis ball will be good a couple times, and then it's not gonna last you a long time to do. It'll be more dog smell versus that interesting saliva smell. It fades pretty quickly.
Yeah. So Barbara, can you address the reason behind nail humping? Oh, humping. So yeah, let's talk about that really quickly. So humping isn't a sexual thing. Humping is over arousal, which Maestro has a lot of. So some dogs, it's almost like they don't know what to do with themselves. And it happens with females too, where they get so aroused that that's one of the ways they deal with that energy, if you will, or that excitement. And they do a lot of humping, or they hump for when they get that aroused. So the goal here is, Barb, is not to let him get that excited. So you can control by having fit when they greet people and things like that, so that it diminishes that desire to want to hump a person, because it's usually excitement. It's not very sexual. It's a lot of over arousal, and it's not dominance either. I mean, it could be in some cases, but most of the cases I've seen with a lot of humping has been over arousal and excitement. They don't know what to do, and that's what they defer to. And you definitely want to address that. Like, don't allow that behavior to happen regularly, because that you'll get more of it, right? Because it's reinforcing. So I usually ask my dog that like to jump up and greet people in a very excited way, sit down, and the greeting has to be a lot lower. And when they start the humping behavior, I interrupt it, give them a break, ask them to do something, a sit or a down, and refocus them on something else, so they're not doing that. They're not doing that behavior, because it's not really dominant. It's over arousal. So that's why females do it, males do it. It gets across the board for all breeds, all sexes, right? Boys hump each other. It's what they do. Well, Ronnie, here's the thing. Sometimes when dogs are playing and they get aroused, they can hump each other, but some dogs might take offense to that. So that's why, if your dogs are okay humping each other, then go for it. But I my Tango used to be, when he was young, he would want to hump my females, and in no uncertain terms got told, yeah, no, you don't get to hump me because I don't like that. And he got corrected pretty hard. So it completely stopped that behavior. And we usually, I think once or twice he maybe tried to do it to me, but I asked him to sit down and kind of focus on something else, and it never became a real problem, right?
I think that if you struggle with that arousal and you can, tell them to get off of humans, sometimes they will redirect. So they may have a favorite blankie or a favorite stuffed animal. And you can see that sometimes too, like go lay down and they're like, oh, I got to get this out first. So
so you definitely want to just, basically the key to that is interrupting the behavior, interrupting before they get overexcited and before they go to that place of humping. And like Joanne alluded to earlier, it could be, for some dogs, it could take 10, 20 minutes for them to get to that point. And others, it could take like a minute and they'll be, all over you. So you want to keep calmness and keeping them under threshold is key. And I know with Maestro, Barb, it's hard because he's still a young dog. So it gets better, I promise. The more, just keep at it, keep working at it, he'll get better.
Yeah, Allison, it does not help. Although you have a Doberman, so I'm sure forehead to the eye or a nose poke into a nose is deterrent enough. They won't do that twice. Gotta love the Dobermans.
Yeah, right.
Tango needs his cameo. He knows we're talking about him.
Yeah, I know. Both of my dogs. I just got home, so they're very needy, both of them. So for some of the, what was the other thing? Oh, so for humping, that's definitely a thing. I wanted to address before, God, we could talk about this forever, is male to male with when you have intact males, and just kind of working that. So everybody's like, well, those of you who have intact males do need to monitor the interactions they have with all male dogs, neutered and intact. Usually, a lot of times, it's the neutered males that go after the intact males in many cases, right? I had one neutered male. If the other dog was intact, he did not like it. And so here's one of the things I feel is, I think dogs should be able to tolerate every, intact male, neutered. They don't have to like everybody, but they have to learn how to tolerate it. So I used to have daycare, I allowed intact and neutered dogs, and they needed to learn how to work and play together and work together, and it really worked well. I was very careful with my neutered male going after intact males, and my intact male loves other dogs. So I have to watch him that nobody goes after him, because he's kind of a weenie. So, but I also feel at this age, he's an adult male now, that if somebody brings it on, he might go ahead and say, I'm gonna, even though he's never ever done it, but I'm not gonna set that up, right? So I'm very, very mindful of that.
Yeah, and that adolescence phase, guys, is so important. Don't wait for them to make a huge mistake. If you start to see your dog getting a little growly or a little, that's mine, or just a little bit of that, just separate and let everyone calm down. I actually, this is near and dear to my heart. I live in a separated household, right? I have X-Pens, I have Gates. I hate it, but my males are not fans of each other. And honestly, I don't think it has anything to do with intact or not intact. Their personalities are different. But if I let them work it out, I'd have a very expensive vet bill, and I know it. So, they've never been in a fight. I don't need to say, oh, they got in a fight. They really don't like each other. I can tell. So, the goal of that, right, is when you use management techniques, gates, fences, trying to keep dogs separate, it will fail at some point in time, right? You are tired and you forgot to close the gate, or, or some emergency happens, whatever. So I know, because they've never been in a fight, they'll probably have, they'll spend their time posturing and doing that. versus, oh, that there's you and we're free, I'm gonna get you, you know.
Right. Right.
So
Because,
again, that prevention is the big key to prevent big issues.
right. Because that and just to because when no, Joanne, when we talked about this, her dogs are not, they don't look at each other like, I'm going to get you the first chance I get. Because a lot of times once they get into a fight, that's what happens. The minute somebody gets loose, whatever, it's going to go after the other one. That's not what her dogs do. They're just like not fans of each other. So I think if they ever accidentally got together, there probably wouldn't be a huge fight. It would be more like, what are you doing here? I don't know. What are you doing here? And you could easily interrupt that, right? Because they've never been in a fight. That's the key to it. So because management does fail. Believe me, I know, I have the stitches to prove it. You want the dogs to be able to, they've been around enough that it won't be like, I don't think if they're ever accidentally together that it's going to be a big fight right away. I think it might take a little while before that would happen, which would give Joanne plenty of time to, get over there and stop it or move things around or change things around. So, with neutered males, so don't assume it's the intact males that are the problem all the time. They're not. It's not always. The intact males could be really, the neutered males could be very, very. They can be rough on those intact males. So you want to be really mindful of that. Don't assume because the dog is neutered that he's going to be okay with your intact male, because that is not always the case, right? So you want to be real thoughtful of that, and just those of you who have intact males, be very careful with that, because that is an assumption that people make, that it's the intact males that's the problem. No, a lot of times the neutered male will be the ones that are going to be a little bit more serious about the situation than the intact males in some cases. Of course, it depends on the dog, but so with the males, you really want to, what we want you to come away with, it's like, don't just, oh, he's intact, he just does that. No, you can compromise, come together and let him do doggy things, but also when you need him to do other things and work with you, that they're able to do that. Allowing them to just do boy stuff all the time, a lot of marking and all that, it just does become a bigger problem. So you want to definitely address that before it becomes don't let them just go on and just peeing everywhere, and then when they go to a trial or they do something else, it's a big problem.
Yeah, and we all have our own sort of what we like, males or females or both, right? I'm actually partial to males. But just remember, when we were talking about that big surge in testosterone, right? And when that comes, until it can reduce itself a little bit and level off, that can be a really tough training time as well. I think we all know testosterone, right, can sort of take over the brain sometimes and make them make really stupid decisions. It can also seem like, oh my gosh, they're never going to get this, right? Not every dog, but when you get a male, you have to sort of understand, not in every case, but in a lot of cases, it's a little bit more of a struggle to train some things. But usually by the time they're 3 or 4, they're lovely, right? You just got to get through adolescence. I remember Nancy and I having many a conversation about, I'm just going to kill him. I'm going to kill him too. So, just the frustrations of training a young male. And now that they're older, they're lovely. So you just got to get there.
Yeah. And it's the pill, it's so disgusting. Yeah. And it's some of those things. And a lot of I think one of the things the takeaway is understanding why they do certain things is so helpful, because then you can make a decision on if it's okay. Like if you don't care that the dog marks or whatever outside and you're comfortable with that, or they do it on walks or whatever, it's fine. But just understanding why they do things, it makes just things just so much easier. So Barb was asking, what about another dog who keeps humping him? He's okay with it, but we don't know if we should stop it. Yeah, I would not let another dog, even though he's okay with it, I would not allow the other dog to do that. because it's not helping the other dog either. And the thing is with Maestro, he's still a very young dog and very immature. When Maestro decides he doesn't like that anymore, then it's going to be a bigger problem. So I would just interrupt it. And all you have to do by interrupting it is just stop, have them sit down. You can give them a treat, just have them do something else to take their mind off of it, and then you can re-engage them in play. But give them more breaks. For dogs that tend to like to hump when they're playing with each other, just interrupt the play, have them give them a little bit of a timeout, and then let them go back and play again. Right? That's all. It's just interrupting that. And eventually it really does get better and they stop doing it. But because what you're doing is stopping the arousal so that they don't start humping. And same with if you have like a couple of intact males or males that play, don't allow a lot of rough play too much. Like boxers and some of the bully breeds sound like they're killing each other, but they're really not. But you really want to make sure that play stays equal, balanced. A lot of give and take should be part of play. If there's not a lot of give and take, where one's kind of not having as much fun as the other one, then you need to readjust and reassess that, right? There should be a lot of give and take in play, right? So they're not, so that way they're not, the other dog is neutered and Maestro's intact. See, my point. And Maestro is a very nice dog and he'll tolerate it, but you don't know how long because he's still a puppy, still really young. And he might decide one day he goes, okay, that's it. I don't like that. And then you're going to have a problem. So yeah, interrupt the behavior and then just let them chill out. All right, guys. There was a lot of information. I would probably have loved to have gone deeper into some and not the others, and I still might. Terriers are loud players too. Yeah.
I don't think the Dobermans need help on how to be loud, though. Just saying.
I know they're good at it, I'm sure. So I want you to just think about like allowing them to, when they do stuff. And for marking females, same. So they shouldn't be allowed to mark whenever they want. Same thing, same process, right? All right.
And
what about smaller dogs play with bypasses and the other small dog? Yeah.
So Carolyn, I think he had a lot of time playing with big dogs as a puppy, right? So that's sort of what he's used to. And the other small dog you have at home corrects him pretty decently when he tries to play. So, right, it's kind of a learned behavior. But he also has a lot of arousal. So I think, being able to be, and I know his favorite playmate also is tied to arousal. So they're good playmates because they're, like she said, there's that give and take, but they're both at such a high level. It's still good to interrupt that.
Yeah. And Lisa, dogs that are neutered hump because they're over aroused. It's not a sexual thing. It's an over arousal thing. All right. Thank you all for tuning in tonight. We really appreciate it.
We'll do emails later.
Next week. Yep. Like on our Facebook page too. Next week we have an audiologist that's going to be on our guest. So that's going to be a lot of fun. So anyway, thank you all and see you next week.
Thanks, everybody.